International Podcast Day 2019. Welcome in, everybody. It's super exciting to be back and celebrating and having an international celebration of the power of podcasts. So this hour, we are joined by Cate and Darrell. How are you both doing today?
Fabulous. Very well. Yeah, it's late in our day, but other than that, it's been fantastic.
Great. And you guys are originally from Australia, but now living and working in Singapore. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's my fault. I moved us over here, and we've been here for 3.5 years now, so based in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to get towards your topic. And like we've been saying through International Podcast Day, this is a opportunity for all voices and all stories and all lifestyles to be shared and celebrated. And the industry calls for it, and we are fully embracing that. And what you both are going to be talking about is ethical non-monogamy 101. And so you've been having a podcast for quite some time, Swinging Down Under, and growing in popularity. I've seen your growth on Twitter and everything. So really looking forward to your discussion here. But I did first want to start out and mention our International Podcast Day sponsors for the year. First off, without their support, this event would not be possible. You can check out internationalpodcastday.com/sponsors. You can get little free giveaways. You can get some discounted services from our sponsors. We definitely encourage you to go over there. So our platinum sponsor is Blueberry. They are a full-service podcasting company, of course, providing podcast hosting, statistics, advertising opportunities. You can find a lot more at blueberry.com. Our gold sponsors, repurpose.io, automatically converts your audio podcast into engaging videos and uploads them to YouTube and Facebook and other social media outlets. You can try it for free by heading over to repurpose.io/IPD. And Libsyn, another gold sponsor, they are a podcast hosting, distribution, and monetization solution for audio and video podcasters worldwide. We know you're out there, so reach your audience everywhere and on the most popular audience destinations like Spotify and Pandora. Check out Libsyn.com. And we want to thank our streaming partner, StreamYard. They've definitely helped us out this year and allowing this 30-plus hour segment to continue issue-free. Thank you so much. You can find more at StreamYard.com. And finally, we'd like to thank our celebration supporters, Second Line Themes, Geeks Rising Podcast Network, Synth, Outlier HQ, and Focusrite. And one final time, you can find those over at internationalpodcastday.com/sponsors. Well, Darrell and Cate, thank you so much for taking the time, volunteering your time. I know you're busy. We're all busy. So we can't thank you both enough for coming in and sharing about your story and your lifestyle and what's going on with both of you. So welcome to International Podcast Day.
Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you. I know Steve's probably in the background working on some tech stuff, but really appreciate the invitation and allowing us to join on this day. We actually released a podcast last year to celebrate this day, and now we get to be part of it. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty damn exciting. But hello, everybody out there. We are Cate and Darrell, and we are from the Swinging Down Under podcast. And today we're going to talk about ethical non-monogamy.
Right? Yes, with the 101 of it.
The 101.
The relatively simple stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get a little bit into that today, and just to mention though, if you do see our adopted dog Penny jump into the camera view, she's had a bit of a vet visit today, so she may be up and down. So our apologies. We're now classifying her as the third member of the Swinging Down Under podcast crew.
Yeah, she's had some teeth removed today, so she's a little bit more nervous than usual.
Yeah. So I'll go first with the introduction, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, I'm Cate. As we mentioned before, we are, actually, as Dave mentioned, we are Australians, but we now live in Asia. I'm 34 and, excited to be part of this podcasting. We have been podcasting for 5 years. I just have so much to talk about to do with non-monogamy and the changes and everything else in our relationship. But Darrell and I, however, we've been together for 10 years.
We have been together for 10 and married for 1.
Yes, married for 1.
As of yesterday, in fact.
As of yesterday, that's correct, yes.
So long-term couple, certainly in Australia, the chances of becoming married very early on now in the relationship are usually fairly unusual. So, we were very late after 10 years.
Yeah, exactly correct. And what we're going to talk about today, aside from just kind of ethical non-monogamy 101 and what that really means, and we'll dig into some of these terms that we're going to be using, but we're also going to share our journey, because we did actually not start as non-monogamous people. We actually started as monogamous couple for the first 5 years of our relationship. So we're going to dig a little bit into some terminologies, how our journey got started, what that means for us, and really, if you're out there and you're interested to learn more about it, where you can actually find resources. And do feel free to pop up in the chat and ask us questions as well. We'll just answer them as we're cruising through.
Yes.
So let's get started with the definition then. What is non-monogamy? I mean, Darrell.
What is ethical non-monogamy?
Well, yeah, let's break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be ethical non-monogamy? If somebody asked you, elevator pitch.
Ethical non-monogamy is non-monogamy, but with the idea that you make other people's relationships or your own relationship with other people stronger rather than weaker by being with them. So, for example, we're not, and most of the people we know who are ethically non-monogamous are not interested in playing with people who are in a monogamous relationship that are potentially cheating, if you want to use that word. So with that in mind, the ethical part is all about actually being honest with yourself and with your partner, and honest also with the broader group, but broader world. Not doing anything that doesn't add to the positivity of this lifestyle.
Yeah, I think a good thing is probably enhancement. It's about enhancing our life, our relationship, and the other people that we interact with, and that can be a couple or it can be a single. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're unethical if you're playing with a single, or you're only ethical when you're playing with a couple.
And of course, the non-monogamy bit is
such a broad spectrum.
Is kind of very, very broad and covers all sorts of aspects of potentially everything from open relationships all the way through to polyamory, depending on what lifestyle you're involved in. So it is very, very, very broad, and I encourage anyone to do, to have a bit of a look at the broader picture on Google. That's probably the best way to go, because we don't really have enough time to get through all of it at this point. I mean, it's a broad spectrum of interactions, broad spectrum of people. But what we have learned on the way through that is it's generally a really nice cross-section of what humanity has to offer. And in general, the good and the bad is in there, but not all bad, which is, I suppose, from the outset when we first started on this, it was one of our concerns.
Different to, I guess, the societal norm. So what we've done is we've basically taken our relationship where we are still committed, and that's another misconception, which we'll talk about some misconceptions a little bit later. But we've taken our relationship, we are fully committed to each other, and we've entered into this realm of non-monogamy. Now, when you hear about that, most people think swinger, right? Or nowadays, people might think open relationship, open marriage, polyamorous. All of these terms have their own different meaning. So, don't make assumptions on if somebody says, hey, I'm polyamorous, or I'm a swinger, or I'm in an open marriage, what those mean, because there are absolutely, as Darrell said, we don't have enough time for today's episode to cover them because there's just so many. So one of the things we wanted to talk about was, I guess, our journey. How did we go from being a monogamous couple 5 years in to being what we are today, which as we said, is an ethically non-monogamous couple, because it is quite a leap. And some people do get into this lifestyle.
And it takes some time.
It takes time,
I mean, it's not something that you can just wander on into and think everything's fine. This is a lifestyle change. And like something as simple as getting fit as a lifestyle change, it has some pain that comes along with it.
Yes, it can do. It can do. Absolutely. So I guess to kind of roll back 5 years ago, how we changed our relationship to what it is today is we started talking about sexual desires.
Well, more correctly, we started talking about your sexual desires.
That's true.
And I asked the question because, as a good long-term partner, I was interested in making sure that my long-term partner was happy, and that included all aspects of her life, not only work and play, but also, her sex life.
And that's actually something that we do talk to a lot of people about, especially on our podcast, or if we get questions on emails. Some people say, how do we go about talking about this to our partner? And oftentimes we respond with the fact that couples will talk about everything, right? They want to talk about their finances, their goals in life, their 5-year plan, their 10-year plan, picket fence, not picket fence. But very few couples.
Children, not children.
Children, not
there's
children.
some really big
adoption
decisions
of a
in
dog,
here.
no dog. huge, big discussions on what your desires are, where do you want to go in life, but rarely do we talk about, well, what are your sexual desires and what would you like to see us do, or even you to do yourself as an individual to feel fulfilled?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, I think there's a lot of people who are open to many things, and that doesn't mean anything outside of your own relationship, but they're open to many things, and those things are sometimes not discussed. So hence why I asked that question of Cate. And when I asked that question of her, the response I got 2 days later, because you couldn't answer it on the spot.
No, I couldn't.
Which was fair. I mean, I kind of caught her by surprise.
Again, I'd never thought about it. Most people don't.
2 days later, you came back with what?
Actually, I came back with a list because I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I went away. And Google is great. Google's a great search engine, especially for somebody who might want to type into Google, top sexual desires for a female or something along the. I'm not saying that I did that. I'm saying I did that, but that's actually what I went away and did. And you can look through this list and see, does that interest me? How do I feel about this? How do I feel about that? And really start to kind of frame yourself. Nowadays, there's apps, there's mobile phone apps, and there's some great websites where either a single person or a couple can go along and
they can do them separately. In fact, so do them separately, and then from that, the website will ask whether you want to inform your partner, and if you tick yes, it will actually inform the partner of what the like interests are for you both. So the interests that and it goes everywhere from I would really like to try that all the way through to that disgusts me is the answers.
Yep.
So if you're at the the disgusts me end of the spectrum, then you probably don't want your partner to be thinking that that's something you're into.
Yeah, and so one that I saw the other day is actually a match one. So it says yes, no, and maybe I'm interested. And then what happens is it's almost like Tinder for a couple, but you go through and you answer all these questions, and when you get a match, it shoots this message to your partner to say, hey, you've got a match. And that could be something that's just new in your own bedroom. And so there are a lot of apps out there so you don't have to Google it, is what I'm trying to say. But so I came back to Darrell and I said, here's these things that I might be interested in, but I really don't know. So let's probably go and watch some pornography. And we went and did that, and again kind of further cemented what I was interested in, what I wasn't interested in. And then we started researching, and this is where I want to talk about common misconceptions about what non-monogamy or what swinging is. Darrell, what would you say is the top misconception about swinging or non-monogamy?
The number one misconception these days is still the same thing. 1970s group of people standing around with hair poking out the top of the guys' shirts, and ladies with big hair, and a key.
Why is there so much hair?
I don't know. I'm not really sure.
But there's hair here, there's hair there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
everywhere.
1970s, right? Okay. I suppose 80s is probably the era of big hair, but you get where I'm headed for. So, and then there's a key bowl in the middle, and that's where everybody puts their keys, and then somebody takes the key out and finds out who the lady is, and they then go to either their bedroom or I guess to their house. I don't know. Yeah. We've never been involved in anything.
Yeah, that does not exist. That's a big common misconception stamp. Another one that I like is that there's something wrong with our relationship, or we're trying to plug a hole in our relationship. So there's either something wrong with us, or we've got a bad sex life, or there's something wrong, something inherently wrong with us that we need to then go out and seek other things outside of our relationship. That's always a good common misconception.
Yeah, absolutely. I think after we've been in this lifestyle for a while, we figured out that, yes, you can actually improve your sex life or your
just your life.
Well, just your life, but also the way you interact with people. For example, there's certain things that I might like in the bedroom that Cate doesn't normally necessarily like, right? And I don't have to rule those out of something that I would like to do purely because Cate is uninterested in those. And provided, of course, I have her full support and her full permission, then that's something that we can explore as well as a couple, which is interesting because, traditionally, if you give up part of that to be with somebody when you start a relationship, that's the end of that. It's something you will never look at again if you're in a monogamous relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to simplify it, but it's kind of like being married to somebody who's gluten intolerant or a celiac, and you can't have gluten in the house. Like, that's you giving up gluten.
I'd reference bacon more because most people will understand bacon.
Yeah, you're marrying a vegetarian and there's no bacon in your house. So maybe when you go over to brunch on a weekend to your mate's place, there's fried up, there's bacon and eggs. I don't know. Trying to simplify
That
it a
just
little
got
bit.
weird.
It got weird.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Swinging Down Under podcast. Another common misconception is that one of the partner is forcing the other one to actually participate. So, there is a little bit of concern every now and then about people's, I guess, their reasons for joining. That why are they in the lifestyle? Is it because I'm unhappy with our relationship and therefore I need to go out and seek something else? Or is it because I'm forcing him to do this and he really doesn't want to? There are some misconceptions about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's normally around, I think, on the way in when, who asked the question is one that typically comes up.
That's a common question you get asked.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the majority of the time it's expected that it'll be the male
in the
expected. Relationship.
Fun fact, though, it's actually about 40% female and then 60% male.
Yeah.
So just FYI.
So that doesn't surprise me at all, mainly because I've been around this for a little while now and have asked quite a few people as to what, who started the conversation, how it started, that sort of thing. Because I think one of the interesting things we've learned along this lifestyle journey is that you tend to find out everyone's origin stories. And the origin story is the origin of their relationship, firstly, how it progressed, and then how they progressed to potentially an open or an ethically non-monogamous relationship. And that's seems to be the way you get to know people in the first instance, provided, of course, you like them. And like, when I say like, that doesn't necessarily mean what they look like. It's a whole spectrum of things, which we'll continue to touch on as we go through this.
Another common misconception, it's all about sex. So that's a big one. I don't know how we missed that up until this point.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and actually, well, in fact, I think, we say these things and we're not coming from a place of, being on the top of a pedestal, because actually I thought these things going in 100% of the time. I was thinking, gosh, what is this swinging thing? Gosh, is he, I broached the subject, and is he not happy with our sex life? You ask yourself these questions, right?
Well, I suppose the reason you do that is because
where do you see
us,
you see it in media, right? Films,
swinging, absolutely.
What you said before.
Yeah, but also, you when somebody tells you that you're not something, or that you are, that they want to try something different, and that includes, when Cate occasionally reaches across the table and gives my brand new love handle because I've been traveling so much, a squeeze. There's certainly there's a part of that stings a little. You get the initial bite. But we were lucky enough, I suppose, and strong enough in our relationship that we could deal with the initial bite and then work through that to figure out what the consensus was to make things work for us.
Yes. Yeah. But to go back, it's not all about sex, actually. So what we've learned along the past 5 years of being in this type of a relationship is that we've gained so many friends. We've gained so much knowledge, information. We've really learned a lot about ourselves. We've learned a lot about our relationship too. So, historically, we would argue about things like finances, like, I don't know, who's taking out the trash or who's cooking dinner. I don't know, just as an example. And now those things are, I would say, pretty small on the radar, because, you just have this opportunity to talk to each other a lot better. And, we've seen
it's not better. It's just, you just talk to each other about things that normally you'd be concerned about talking to each other about.
True.
That's the biggest thing. I mean, the reason those other things have become so small now is purely because we're able to deal with those on a day by day without any sort of issue. And, and it's actually the little things that typically make relationships work poorly, like somebody leaving the toilet seat up, or the lid off the toothpaste, or things like that just build up and eventually they cause a snap. Whereas now we've had some really big conversations that have
taken some time,
a lot of time and effort and
understanding,
and pausing and going back after 2 days and re-examining where we got to after the 2-day period. And because of that, we've I suppose those other things become fairly inconsiderate, fairly small, because you're able to just deal with those when they pop up, because you're talking about some fairly in-depth things. So the small things become smaller.
That's true. Yeah. Any other misconceptions that you can think of off the top of your head?
Everyone wears really big gold chains.
Everyone wears gold chains. Oh, actually, here's a good one. Everyone in the swinging lifestyle is a small framed, really trim, really fit,
absolutely.
younger, beautiful, successful.
Everyone's middle 20s and gorgeous.
Yeah, and so
or
I couldn't
middle 70s.
Yeah, I couldn't possibly join this non-monogamous lifestyle because I am to fill in the blank. That's a really common
tall, thin, fat. Short, unsuccessful, too successful.
Religious backgrounds, cultural, different beliefs. I mean, we've heard the whole spectrum. And the interesting thing is we've seen that diverse spectrum at events, at parties, at big global conventions for people in our lifestyle. We've seen the full spectrum of people. So it is absolutely a misconception and something that, we all do our best, even on the podcast, to break down some of those we call them barriers to entry, break down some of those walls, because everybody can absolutely be part of this if they want to.
I kind of touched on this before, right? This lifestyle is really a cross section of everyday life, and we've seen everyone from people who sweep gutters all the way through to CEOs of companies, and everything in between, all sorts of spectrums, there is a vast majority of very good people in any part of society, and that's no different in this one.
Yeah, it's just a normal community, right?
Yeah,
doesn't matter if it's your suburban community, your church group, or whoever it is. It's just a varying community. So, considerations. So, if you're out there and you're wondering, again, how do we get from monogamous to now, or you're interested in that journey, how does one talk to their partner about these sorts of considerations? So, when you first start, again, you don't know much.
Very well planned is how you talk to your partner about it.
That's true. You start Googling, or you start looking at media, or you start, from what you know. And again, you take those up. So you bundle that up.
Yeah, the biggest start is understanding what you want from it.
Right. And you take those misconceptions.
You take the misconceptions, throw them out the window. Oh, well, sorry.
You bundling it in.
Yeah, sorry. You throw them out the window and bundle in the reality, which is the bit that you've researched and figured out. But also having an understanding of what you want from this is really important. It's critical, in fact, because if you don't have that understanding, it's very hard to communicate what you want.
100%.
And when you get to a point in the conversation where you can't communicate what you want, you need to stop and go and figure it out, and then come back and start again. And that's really hard.
Yeah. So this is all about how to talk to your spouse. So if you are having these thoughts, opinions, desires, interest. And as Darrell said, I mean, these conversations may not end up anywhere. So, if you're out there listening to this, that doesn't mean that you're going to be in the swinging lifestyle tomorrow. These conversations can just increase things in the bedroom. Could even be, just talking about your own desires, role play, whatever it might be. But the first thing is to help your partner understand your desires. And as Darrell said, you have to be able to articulate that.
Yep.
I tell this to people all the time because, for example, if Darrell and I were having this conversation and he approached me about swinging and I've got those misconceptions running around in my head, I've got some negative self-talk going, my first reaction is going to be visceral, going to be negative, and quite frankly, I'm probably going to attack you, I guess, because I don't understand it. But if he comes at me and he's got a very articulate way to talk to me.
Just a well thought and even toned is the best way to go. Well, this is for any tough conversation.
Yeah, that's very true.
This is not just for opening up your relationship potentially. It's for anything, well thought out, as even tone and as loving as you can deliver a message is always the best way to go.
And be prepared to answer questions.
Yeah, and some of those questions might be outside of your area of expertise, and that kind of actually is what prompted us to the next part of our journey, right? Is because some of the questions I was asking you didn't have an understanding for.
Yeah.
And when you went out and had a look, some of the things seemed interesting, some didn't, but it allowed you to do your own self-exploration and figure out, well, what do I want? And am I open to this? And it appears you were, given we're now 5 years down the track.
That's true.
In a very, very committed, ethically non-monogamous relationship, then you were open to one or two things.
I was.
Yeah.
But how do you, I mean, talking to your partner about their sexual desires, some of the ways that you can do that is through soft questions like fantasies, do you have any fantasies that you can talk about in the bedroom? Again, it doesn't need to involve anybody else, but just things that you can play out yourselves and see if you can have those soft questions, tell me more about that, and opening up that conversation too. So try not to have just a yes, no answer. Try to have something a little bit more of a scenario, or have you ever thought about this, or have you ever considered this, and just let people tell their story. That's another big one, I think.
So open questioning.
Open questioning,
Yeah, rather than closed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Salesman.
Yes. So, I mean, open questioning is really important because you do get to know things that you weren't expecting. And I can attest right now, if you sit down and have an open question conversation with your partner, you will end up learning something you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And we still do that after 10 years, that we can ask open questions and learn things that we weren't across previously.
That's true. And I guess, bedroom chat's another big one too, right? Like actually taking things into the bedroom. But again, try not to spring this on somebody mid rendezvous, because your partner's probably going to think, what the hell just happened? So, but talk to us about bedroom talk.
Oh, I'm going to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
have a crack.
I'll have a crack at it. So, I mean, bedroom talk's everything from dirty talk through to asking somebody to be involved in, maybe some role play or something like that. You can start there or finish there. Sorry, I shouldn't say start there, because that's all it might ever end up being, is that you're involved in some things that you both enjoy in your own bedroom, which is a nice place to be. So, that's what I'd consider bedroom talk to you. I mean, do you have an addition to that? I feel like you were leading me down a direction that I wasn't aware of.
No, I don't. I mean, I'd agree with that. Just start out talking about things, and I guess, talking openly, because that's the best way to go about this, and come at it from a space of a place and a space of being completely judge free. Just because you divulge something or your partner divulges something to you doesn't mean that you're going to run away and do that tomorrow. It just means that you're discussing it, and it may just stay a fantasy. So having that open conversation that is non-judgmental and may not go anywhere is great. And actually, you can almost open the conversation with that, right?
And you need to understand that, because we're all built by our upbringing, societal pressures, all those sorts of things are things that we are as humans inherently bound to. So you kind of have to, and I mean, not to speak for you, but you went through this in a big way, was understanding what relationship or what your childhood relationships had to do with how you felt about potentially moving into non-monogamy and things like that. There was and your upbringing and also, the religious pressures. We come from a country that's predominantly Catholic background or some form of Catholicism, and with that in mind, there's a lot of pressure for you to be in a monogamous relationship. There's an understanding that you'll get married to one person and stay with them forever and never stray from that relationship. So, there's a lot built into all of us that we have to work through individually before you can even work through it as a couple. And sometimes, when I opened the conversation with you, it really did prompt you to have a lot of self-thought after the self-doubt had faded a little bit. And that took a lot of, I'll say work, because
it did take work.
I don't have any better words.
No, it did take work.
No, I mean, it took work from my side as well to keep you comfortable and calm in the fact that we were in a relationship that I didn't want anything else out of. And, I still would have been comfortable in that relationship as it sat. It was just a matter of the fact that we had found something potentially that we could both explore together.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. So having that open platform is super important, and starting it out in that manner where it is judgment free and openly saying that we're going to talk about this doesn't mean it goes anywhere, and let's just kind of spitball. And whether you want to do that over a glass, a coffee, or a glass of wine, I mean, have at it. I think maybe want to go out for a coffee date. I'm not sure. Rules and boundaries. Now that kind of leads us on to the next thing. Once you've started talking about this and you've started researching and you kind of understand a little bit about where you want to go, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're all in jumping in. I mean, you can then have these discussions about rules and boundaries and what that means. And
I think primarily we probably should define rules and boundaries in terms of what they look like for us and most people
what it is in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So a rule is something that you as a couple define or work toward to say, this is something that we will possibly never change in terms of how our relationship is with the ethical non-monogamous lifestyle. That's a tough grouping of words for people out there who want to give it a shot. So, we possibly will never have those changed. And the other side of that is boundaries. And boundaries are something that are open to discussion, and they're open to discussion either in the event where you pull yourself away from potentially another couple or another single and have the conversation, or they're open to discussion just as you're sitting on the couch or over dinner or something like that. Of course, provided over dinner is a appropriate setting to have that conversation, because having it in front of your parents is probably something that makes everything a little tougher when it comes to having the conversation. So that's the differences we see it between boundaries and rules, is that boundaries are somewhat flexible and they can be discussed, whereas rules are hard and fast. And we actually started this journey with some fairly strong rules, really, really strong rules, in fact. And very quickly did Cate break those.
Thanks, babe.
When there's us, I'll throw you under it.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, so look, we'd set some rules that were were probably unachievable, realistically looking backward. And
we said some things that when we started this journey, we thought were what we required, what we needed, what would make us feel safe, feel happy with our own relationship, and all these sorts of things. And then quickly, as we discovered our journey a little bit more, perhaps understood more about both what this is and what our relationship's about, and that's when we kind of reevaluated them.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we ended up in a position where we have all boundaries effectively. We don't actually, to this date, have any hard and fast rules, and that's.
Well, we do. We have one.
Do we?
Yeah. So I was about to say, here's an example of some rules and boundaries. If you're wondering what these are, protected play.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So
sorry. That's actually not, I wouldn't consider that rule.
Well,
I just consider that safe, ethical play practice, right?
But that is a rule for us, is a safe practice, safe interactions with people. So we are
as safe as possible.
As safe as possible, correct. Absolutely. Thank you. And that's something that is a rule, because we're not going to be moving that around the place. A boundary might be where we would go off and perhaps we don't want to progress anything on the first date with someone new. We want to have maybe a second or a third date before we're progressing with someone new. And the reason that's a boundary is because we may meet somebody who's coming in out of town and we just click with, and we say, actually, you know what, let's continue on with this evening. And so that is where it's a boundary. We would go off and have a discussion about that. How are you feeling? Are you interested? And then we would then come back to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is a good descriptor. Unfortunately, I look like I've forgotten one of the rules in this conversation.
Hey, babe, if there's a bus driving up the road, I'm going to throw you under it, right?
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, yours was a heavier bus than mine, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
this is a double-decker.
Yeah, so that is a really good example, and it allows you to have those conversations, and it allows you to change with the environment in which you're set as well. So when we moved to Singapore, the lifestyle here is a little less obvious, and also a little less active. There's a lot more going on in Australia than there is here, and a lot more in the US,
United States and
Europe, as well. But with that in mind, whilst we're here, we've had to migrate our boundaries a little bit to be a little bit more open to potentially meeting people on the first date, and potentially enjoying a night with them on the first date.
Yeah.
Now, that is not something typically we would have done historically. I mean, that's not how we prefer to build these relationships, and some of our relationships are actually really long-standing relationships. We have friends. Yes, they're still friends. We're not polyamorous. We have friends who we have now been in we'll call it a pants on and pants off friendship for the last 4 years. 4 years. Yeah.
Yep.
So they were one of our very first partners in terms of couple partners, and we love them to death. Now, that doesn't make us polyamorous. Loving your brother or sister, family doesn't make it that you're interested in them sexually either. So with that in mind, we have times where we catch up with these guys.
Yeah.
And we simply have dinner, or
wine tasting, or escape room time,
absolutely.
or board game fun, or whatever it is. And actually, you just mentioned the word love there, which, again, going back for 4 years, probably would have had a visceral reaction from me, because, again, I had put that in the box of that's something that you say to your primary partner, this person sitting right here, my life partner, my soulmate. Yep. That's I reserve that language for him only, and then you use it for this other couple, and so it can be quite confusing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it was about a year ago.
You've kind of got to build those along the way, right?
Some people do, yeah. I mean, this is obviously not a one shoe fits all sort of scenario. Everyone's very, very different in how they approach this. But it definitely was I think about a year ago, a point in time where I said, hey, hold on a second. I do have love for these people because they are my friends, and, I would definitely go out of my way. So yeah, just to pause on the word love in this kind of a relationship seems a little bit peculiar, but just to give you a bit of understanding.
Yeah, I mean, but we've also still got friends that are not lifestyle friends who I also love dearly. That I think the real difference is that we probably always love those guys, like the pre-lifestyle guys. We just never felt comfortable saying that out loud.
Well, you confuse love and sometimes love and sex for a lot of people is really interconnected, and so that can be hard to compartmentalize, I guess.
Yeah, well, I don't think it is even a compartmentalization. I think it's more you learn that there are many different styles of love. There's many different styles of and again, I use the example of family because I love my family as well, but that doesn't mean that I want anything remotely outside of a normal loving family relationship with them. Whereas, you can also love other people in different ways, and I love you in a very different way to what I love my family. Doesn't mean I love them or Kate any less than each other. It's just a different type.
Different kind of love, yeah.
Yeah. So that was something that was an interesting eye-opener to us.
Yeah, it was for us.
Again,
because I would have given that visceral kind of reaction, and then now it's like, oh yeah, and again had this conversation with Darrell and said, I just thought about this crazy thing, and then he was like, actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So again, we're not ashamed to kind of bring these things up. Now, a good first step. So we talk about these rules and boundaries, and then you're researching a little bit, you're understanding more about what you want, what your partner wants. Some good first steps, though. What are they? I mean, a lot of people ask, how do we take this first step? We spent weeks or months or even sometimes years discussing this. Some of the people we meet, they have been married for 20 years and they were each other's first loves right out of high school.
And not even some of them. I mean, some of them were 16 when they first got together, and they've been now married for
sometimes 30 40
years.
Yeah. And so they say, like, what do we do now? We spent months discussing it, months researching it, months listening to podcasts. Where the hell do we go from here? And it is a bloody good question. If you happen to be in Australia, Europe, or the United States, you've got some pretty good options.
Yeah, it becomes a lot easier in, I think, most places outside of Asia. It's a lot less hidden. So yeah, with that in mind, there are quite a few different options. There's and depending on your bravery. Because it is kind of brave, right? I mean, we were both terrified the first event we went to.
Well, let's actually talk about the difference between the first date and then a first club experience. So what we're about to talk about is clubs. What Darrell's kind of talking about with bravery is attending an actual on-premise club. Now, why he keeps bringing Asia up is because we don't have any of those in this region.
And just to clarify, that's an on-premise sexual interaction club.
Yes. And so there are these clubs that exist in a lot of cities all around the world, and in Australia, as we said, USA and Europe, tons and tons of them. Some of them membership only, some of them you pay just on the evening. And going along to one of these clubs to meet like-minded people is, in your head, really daunting when you first start.
Yes, it is.
Because again, you've got these misconceptions buzzing around.
But
it's nervous.
I think you touched on it really well there. You're just going to a club to meet like-minded people.
That's what you're doing, but that's not what you think you're.
No, that's not what
you think. You're going to walk in.
You're going to walk.
You're going to be accosted by somebody.
Well, I mean, I think you feel like you're going to walk into a scene from Eyes Wide Shut, if you've ever seen that, and it's where there's just people shagging everywhere and there's condoms dripping from ceilings and spas and jacuzzis going nuts over here and people smoking in the corner and just fill in any seedy sort of ideal that you can have, and that's basically where people.
Here's what it actually looks like. Imagine the last bar that you entered. That's it.
Just like that. Just like that. So, actually, with people probably sitting at the bar enjoying a drink by themselves, not even necessarily interacting with anybody
possibly
else.
A DJ, dance floor. Yeah. That's a lot of the time what they look like. So. Clubs can be, it takes a lot of bravery sometimes to get yourself to go along. Sometimes people go for some liquid courage. I know we did our first visit.
Well, you took a little more than I did.
Yeah. Had a few cocktails before the first visit.
Yep.
And then, you enter and you start talking to people and then you kind of relax a little bit. Now, I actually also think that having a date with a couple the first time around is also extraordinarily brave, but for different reasons. Yep. In a club, you have these ideas that, it's going to be crazy. But with a first couple date, there's no other external surroundings.
Stimulus. You're just
That's it.
You're
It's
there.
you and them.
Yep. And if if the conversation breaks down at any point due to any reason, then it's just you sitting there staring at another couple.
As opposed to being in a club where you can go off to the bar and get a drink, you can go to the bathroom, you can go for a dance. There's all of these other options, or even just have a walk around. But I think actually it takes a lot of courage to go on your first couple-to-couple date.
Well,
almost I would say more than actually attending an event or a club.
Well, I think it does certainly for us. It still kind of shakes us now. Going on a couple-to-couple date,
different kind of,
or even a couple-to-single date, we still have the nervousness, the real nervousness that comes along with any date, and that keep in mind as well. If you've been in a monogamous relationship for a long period of time,
how the hell do you flirt? Do you guys know? If you do, if you've got a figure, just tell us.
Yeah,
because I'm still
tell Cate.
I'm still 5 years on. I'm still pretty crap at it. So it's daunting. Because how the hell do you do it? You're unpracticed. You don't know. And then also flirting with as a team.
Yeah, I mean,
twice as hard.
It's for guys. We typically had wingmen on the way through, and I'm sure it's the same for ladies, right? You had wing women who would help you out in a flirting scenario, perhaps in a club. But it becomes a very different dynamic when your wing woman is also potentially your partner or wife, in my case. So it gets very exciting sometimes, because especially given, as Cate just attested, her flirting skills are
they're great.
I mean, they could do with a polish.
They could do with
a polish. That's the best way to put it.
Thank you, darling. How do you find people? That's a good one, though. Like where I mean, we're talking about all these mythical beings. Where the hell do you find them?
Surprisingly, like every other way you want to find anyone these days, the internet. There is a whole lot of online platforms in terms of dating websites for everything from singles through to group scenarios on dating sites. And also there's apps. There's 5 or 6 different apps that you can add yourself to as a couple, which is distinctly different from a lot of apps. Although even Tinder now has the option for you to be on there as a couple. So you have the ability to pick up these different apps and also network with people locally using websites. You have to be careful though, because in a lot of countries and a lot of locations, the websites are really quite area specific. So, certainly for us down here, it's a different website to what we were using in Australia. Totally different.
And a different one to what we use when we travel to the United States as well. Yes. And so, just a quick Google search will actually find the best dating site for your area. And you can actually most of the time get a free trial for, I think, 30 to 90 days, depending on the site. I always recommend to do that, especially when you're in a big geographical location like the United States. There are, I think, about 5 or 6 different apps that are, or websites that are a little bit, have more of a population on them than some of the smaller ones. And even, as Darrell said, even within the city, within the state, there's more popular sites. So go on there if you want to have a look around and do your free trial before you commit to one.
So the first club we went to, we turned up there and they said, what's your handle for the particular website that's
really popular in Australia?
In Australia. And we said, what are you talking about?
What the hell's a handle? That's what I said, because,
So we
hashtag techie.
Yeah, we ended up finding and adding ourselves to that website, and in fact, that's where we met the couple that I was talking about before.
We actually added ourselves to 3. So we went home. We found this one that they were talking about. Then we started Googling, what are the other options? We found another 2. I signed us up for all 3, and then I promptly unsigned us up for 2 of them, because it wasn't really our scene. You could tell in the marketing and the way that they were producing their content that it wasn't matching what we were looking for. Yeah. It's not to say that other people aren't looking for.
So what are we looking for?
That's a good question. So well done.
Yeah, that was a good segue. I figured I'd chew at it while I had it.
Thank you. What we're looking for now, again, we've said we're ethically non-monogamous long term. We also call ourselves sociosexuals. So Darrell mentioned before pants on, pants off friendship, and that's how we classify ourselves. And to break it down a little bit, you have sapiosexual, which means that the person is extremely interested in someone's intellect more than the physical appearance. And then you have people that are more interested in the physical appearance than perhaps they are in the intellect. And we happen to be a bit of a crossbreed of all of them. So we want people who can be friends with us. We want to have intellectual conversation, stimulating conversation. We want to be able to go to bars, to restaurants, wine tastings, board games, all of these things.
All the normal things that, you know, any standard relationship might be involved, like friendship might be involved in as couples. And that includes Cate going off with them potentially by herself occasionally for wines or for you know, for anything. I mean, playing games. Games are not really my sort of thing. So I send Cate by herself to deal with the gaming side of things. I like the computer gaming style, but not the board gaming style. So that's up to so I leave that to them. So that, again, that's, you know, that brings me back full circle to one of my comments before, which is, you know, one of the things Cate really loves is board games, and it's really not my thing. And this is just another couple that we have who are friends,
who happen to love board games. So they'll
So
come around, and he will go and do virtual reality or do whatever else he's doing, and then we'll sit down for a couple of hours and play a 3-hour board game together over some wine and some cheese. So again, even though
I'll just go for a slope
or something, even though it's not sexual, you know, you get the point that there's other things. So what we're looking for, to break it down into a nutshell, is that interaction with people, that when we're looking at profiles, we are looking for a profile that has, I guess, a certain feel to it, a certain likeness of you know, similar to us, you know, the way that they're approaching both the lifestyle or even just life in general. Do they like to travel? Do they like wine and coffee? Do they, you know, these sorts of things. So we're looking for people who are of a like-minded type.
Yeah, who are open to, you know, having conversations and enjoying wine and enjoying each other's time. Yeah.
We need to stop saying wine so much. They'll think we're alcoholics.
No. Just enjoy wine.
Yeah, that's true. So that's kind of how we find people. You've got a dating site, you've got the clubs, you've got events, you know, big events too. And depending on where in the world you are, those events can range from a 100-person hotel takeover right through to 2,600 people, you know. So there are events out there for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we get into some of the takeaways?
Let's get into the takeaways. Yeah, we're going to wrap. We'll probably need to start rolling into some takeaways, because I know Dave's going to pop back on in a little while. He's listening to us right now. Hey, Dave. Key takeaways. We have 8, and we have them listed. If you keep seeing us look up above, it's because I've pasted above our screen here some of the key points that we're using. So the takeaways today, one of them is focus on your relationship before opening it up. And that kind of goes back with making sure that you're able to really understand yourself, understand what you're trying to talk to your partner about, and making sure that you're solid. I mean, don't come into this because there are horrible things happening. Try not to add additional stress to your relationship.
Yeah, this is not one of those. This is a scenario like adding a baby to a bad relationship. It's only going to make it worse, you know. So don't fall into that trap. If things are not good, then you will only make them worse by adding this stress to it, because this is and can be stressful, because you have to ask questions and answer questions that you may not feel comfortable in doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you may feel uncomfortable even in yourself to bring some of these desires to the table, because of the fact that you grew up perhaps in a little bit more of a closed off or repressed relationship growing up, you know, household.
Which is actually a really nice segue to number 2,
which is
ensure a strong and honest communication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So being able to actually have that conversation with your partner and have those conversations with yourself. And honesty means also being honest with yourself.
Yep.
Not just honest with your partner, but actually being able to say to yourself, well, you know what? I'm not interested in that. No matter what somebody else wants.
I was about to say that.
I am not going to do that ever.
Yep.
So, and being able to say that out loud, but also something that you or society might think is really, really perverse. You know, there's thousands of people out there.
Right?
There's thousands of people out there that have the same weird fetish as you do. Trust me. So, you know, just be open to those sorts of conversations, and obviously have your boundaries in your own head, so that allows you to communicate those when you need to.
Yeah, and I think it is finding your voice to both express your desires, but also your voice to say that's, and approach it from a thank you for telling me about your desire, because I want to respect him. Thank you for telling me, but I'm not.
It's not something I'm interested in.
Now, understanding the next one, number 3, is moving as fast as the slowest person in the room. That's a common thing you'll hear people in the non-monogamous lifestyle talk about. I think I go as fast as the slowest person. To break it down, what that means is that if we are entering into this and I'm taking a little bit more time to understand how to flirt, I'm taking more time to feel comfortable and at ease. You might even go to a clothing optional resort in Mexico, and it takes me days and days to feel comfortable to start pulling some of those layers off. So, you know, we go as fast as the slowest person in the room.
Absolutely. And that leads nicely on to number 4, which is it's a bonus. This lifestyle is a bonus. Should add to your relationship. If it doesn't, if it takes away, then there's a lot more conversation that needs to be had before you look at it again. Like everything in every relationship, if I was a hardcore cyclist and Cate wasn't interested in cycling, if that starts taking away from our relationship, then there's an onus on me to actually ask myself whether I should continue doing that. And there's an onus on her to ask me to stop as well, or to find some sort of compromise that works for both of us.
Yep.
That's really,
and you
really
can pull the
important.
ripcord. We say pull the ripcord because what it means by that is if even during a date or in this whole idea, one of us comes to the other person and says, I don't want to do this anymore, or I'm feeling really uncomfortable, pause, pull the ripcord if you want to. That's one of the things. Actually, that's probably a second rule that we have.
Yeah, it is. We're going to have to keep getting through these.
Okay, all right. Let me see here. So how much you love your partner by giving them time to consider it. Again, it's just going back to that good communication skills, being articulate, allow them time to process what you're telling them, whether it's your desires or other.
Which actually leads quite nicely onto number 6 in saying that you need to listen to your partner and pay attention to what they're saying, both verbally and physically. It's really important that you can take those physical and those verbal and non-verbal cues and understand, well, I need to act or not act on what is being confirmed to me right now.
So if your partner's doing this to you under the table or doing this, that's probably a time that you're going to slowly.
There's some good signals there as well, by the way. So Cate has been known to have a couple of signals under the table. Some of the time I have to not screw my face up in pain because she signals me that forcefully.
Or, really, you probably want to talk about what they mean beforehand too, because this could be, hey, I'm really quite interested. This is really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Or it can mean, get me the hell out of here. I'm actually really, I'm not happy. I'm freaking out. Now, don't be surprised if it takes, that's number 7, don't be surprised if it takes months, years to understand what is going to be the best for your relationship. This can take time. Some people talk about this and then they're in it in 24 hours. Some people take a few weeks. Some people take a few months. Go, again, at the pace that's going to be beneficial to your relationship.
And every end of the spectrum. We've got friends who started from their very first date, agreed that this is the lifestyle that they wanted.
Mm-hmm. At the beginning of their relationship.
And have lived that for the last 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. And then we've got other people who have been in a long-term 30 plus year monogamous relationship before they opened it up to potentially being involved in ethical non-monogamy. So doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum, you can still be involved if you wish to be and if your partner wishes to be.
Yeah. And number 8. Number 8's a big one.
Oh yeah, you've got to be willing to accept that your desires may not be the same as your partner's, and you've also got to be willing to accept that your desires may actually change when you figure out what they are once being involved in some of them or being around some of them or potentially seeing some of them.
Yes, absolutely. Because these things are movable. Just because you walk in today and you say, I really don't like that piece of fruit, doesn't mean that you're going to not like that piece of fruit in perhaps something else, an ice cream dish or whatever, or you may turn around and hate it. So that's the big one. Big takeaway. Here's Davey's back, but be willing to accept that your desires might not match your partner. Hey, Dave.
Great conversation, Darrell and Cate. Did you have any final takeaways? I didn't want to cut off any of your. It seemed like if you may have had something else.
We got all the way through our 8 with a little bit of coaxing along the way to keep Cate moving along. But we got there. We got there in the end.
Yeah, well, we definitely appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad you reached out via Twitter to say, hey, we'd love to be a part of the event. I'm glad that we've allowed this platform and created this platform to have all voices in podcasting be heard. So I don't know, how long have you been podcasting? It's just been a couple years?
It's been from the beginning of our journey, actually. So quite quickly after we decided to enter into this type of relationship, we decided to start our podcast because we, at the time, couldn't find a lot of Australian voices. And, we just thought we want to kind of give it back to the community and to help other people.
We were looking to pay it forward and to answer the question, it's about 5 years now, basically. 5 years. So just under 5 years since, and that's how long we've been in the lifestyle as well. So I think it's about 4 months after we started in the lifestyle, we got involved in podcasting about it.
First few episodes were pretty crappy, but we're getting there now.
Who's art? Yeah. Well, before we end here, let's throw out a website where people can go to connect with you, connect with your podcast. Where would they go?
So they can just head straight to swingingdownunder.com. You'll find all of our podcast episodes there, as well as a number of the different podcast catchers where you can find us. Obviously, we're on all the majors, Spotify, iTunes, etc. And you can find our social media links there as well, Twitter and Instagram. But straight to the website, swingingdownunder.com is the best place to go.
Perfect. Well, Cate Darrell, I can't thank you enough for being part of International Podcast Day 2019. And yeah, we really appreciate it. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we were able to share your story, and thank you. And I know there's a few things in the chat you may want to check afterwards.
I couldn't see any of the live comments. They weren't coming through, so I'm definitely keen to do that.
Yeah, perhaps go over there and just check base with them. But they had a lot of positive things to say about your relationship, your openness. So
cool. I'll do that straight away, guys.
So, yeah. Well, on behalf of myself and Steve and the entire International Podcast team, we thank you for coming and joining with us, Darrell and Cate. And we encourage everybody to continue to use that hashtag International Podcast Day and continue to celebrate the power of podcasts.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody else as well.